Good morning and welcome to Saturday special of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. The ulama, the religious leaders, the interpreters used to be a very respected, revered lot. They were supposed to be, and at one time they used to be the scholars of impeachable integrity, repute as epitome of knowledge and objectivity. Today we at them, we laugh at them for their eccentricities, for their inane attempts to ridicule the others and to misinterpret Islam. As a matter of fact, there has been a degradation beyond recognition as far as ulama is concerned. And most of the people today understand ulama as that Kahra University professor, who is an ulama, declared that you can have a sex with 6-week-old child provided you don't suffocate her. Where another ulama said that if your wife doesn't listen to you, you have a right to beat her. As a matter of fact, in Islam, ulama is a plural of alim, scholar. So ulama is a plural of scholarly people. Literally it means the learned one. And they were supposed to be guardians. They were supposed to be transmitters and interpreters of the religious knowledge of Islam. They were also the people who interpreted Islamic doctrine and law. If you are to understand Islamic doctrine and law, these were the people, and they emerged as the first interpreters of Quran. Not only that, the hadiths are the secondary portion of Holy Quran. Quran is the word of God. Hadith is directions. Like in Sikhism, Guru Granth is a holy book, but Rahatnama is a guidance. So these people emerged as the first interpreters and transmitters of hadith, and these are the words and the deeds of the Prophet Muhammad. These scholars became the first to outline and elaborate the basic principles of Islamic law, which is Sharia, and they were central to Islamic education in pre-modern Middle Ages. Not today, but at one time, they were everything. Their interpretation was the final. Even now in the local homes, if there's a dispute, people say, go to ulama. And most of the ulamas have emerged as hacks. Ulamas at one time were responsible for interpreting the religious law. Therefore, they at one time claimed that their power superseded that of the government. If you look at the Ottoman Empire, the hierarchy of ulama was the highest. Sheikh al-Islam, that was the title given to ulama. Sheikh al-Islam, the Sheikh of Islam itself. But then, in view of the recent dramatic developments in Afghanistan, questions are being asked, and correctly so, about the role of Islam sets out for ulama, the religious class in the political arena, according to Quran. Very clearly it's mentioned in verse 9.122. And that says the role of the religious scholar is to acquire a deeper knowledge of religion and convey to the people, and the purpose so that the people can guard themselves against evil. Now this verse 9.122 gives a guideline principle that the ulama, other religious teachers among Muslims, must engage only in sphere of knowledge. Now here it's very clear. They have no political role to play. They have no administrative role to play. Their role is restricted absolutely to the sphere of knowledge. And Islam very clearly demarcates and differentiates the sphere of activity of religious scholars and that of the political leaders. Unlike Miri Piri concept of Sikhism, where politics and religion coalesce, and in Islam today they have come together. In Christianity they were together all the time. It was cross leading, and after the cross came the army. But in Islam, in the beginning, the Muhammad invaded, but then he said, okay, interpretation, I leave to ulama. The generals, the commanders would go and conquer. And in other words, the religious scholars must keep themselves away from the political field, but all the time provide spiritual and intellectual guidance. And at the same time, the politicians must carry out the task of administration and organization. So it must be clearly known that as a matter of principle, it's not the task of ulama to become involved in practical politics, as has happened now. Taliban, Al Qaeda, Iran, the chief, the head, Khomeini. He's supposed to be an ulama, but he's a political hack now. So are the originators of Taliban. They have no role, but then they are. So, Quran further says that in case they assume this role, much more basic responsibilities are likely to be neglected. So this is a violation of the Islamic code when ulama try to become politicalized. They must leave political issues to the politicians to handle and devote themselves entirely to the scholarly work. Second, social reform and constructive activities. Now we see ulama going back to the 14th century. That was not a role play. They had to think of the constructive activities and social reform continuously. People always say that Islam is still rooted in the 14th century. Yes, it is. It is because the basic direction of Quran has not been heeded to. The religious scholars must continue to play that role even when they see that the political leaders are not doing their job. So the division of the sphere of activity was followed by even the companions of Prophet Muhammad himself. They did not go by that. The Khalifas, the Umayyad Caliphate, and down to the end of Abbasid Caliphate, right, the whole history. It was very clearly said that the scholars would guide, interpret, spread the message. Even the Spanish Muslim ulama and other scholars made impressive intellectual and scientific contributions. Algebra basically came from Middle East. That was ulama's work, though Islam was not there at that time. But the main job was education, teaching, advisory. So what the Spanish ulama did, or what the Caliphate did, whether it's Umayyad or Abbasid, was absolutely division of responsibilities. And that is why Islam at one time was the intellectual leader of the world. And this process, this pattern continued for about 1,000 years. And this enabled scholars to focus on valuable task of crystallizing the various branches of Islamic knowledge. And they were not affected by the political tumult. In the later period, the ulamas digressed from the scholarly code. Reason, they wanted power, corruption. So they wanted to participate in the political game, and the target was establishment of Sharia rule in various parts of the world. Now the beauty is that the moment Sharia law is the final law, then they are not only interpreters, but as interpreters they also become the judges. That's why I say Qazis are the supreme. Now this effort of the ulamas did not fructify, and you cannot see a single Muslim country in the world which is purely Sharia based, except maybe in Afghanistan. On the contrary, the result of this was that the Muslims everywhere became divided. into two camps, and they were constantly at war with each other. The Muslim societies fell prey to the destructive activities. In January 1827, Sayyid Ahmad Brevely and his companions established what is called the Islamic government in Peshawar. It's near the it's in Pakistan near the border. Now, this was the first government established by the ulama. Sayyid Ahmad Brevely was a scholar, but then he wanted power as well. And when you want power, you become corrupt. And the moment he established this Islamic government, the serious differences developed with the local Muslims. And this so-called Islamic government simply collapsed. And the reason was that the ulama sought to impose Sharia law without preparing the population. As per the Prophet Muhammad, the willingness to accept Islamic laws begins not by force, but begins in any society with intellectual purification of the individuals, rather than with a practical enforcement of laws. So here the ulama was supposed to explain to the people why following the law is good for them in this word and the next word. But when you tell them, okay, you will do this or we'll chop off your hands, as Taliban declared yesterday, that they're going to start chopping off the hands and crucifixion and hangings and killings and beheadings. Now that is cruelty, and that goes against the concept of the real Islamic jurisprudence. Now, as Pius said, Prophet Muhammad simply said that it should be willing, not enforcement. And had the ulama of the Muslim majority countries stayed away from politics and focused on the reform of the Muslims, the awakening of the true spirit of Islam among them would have resulted in producing Islamic literature according to the modern standards. So they have deviated from the ordained role in the Quran because of social reform. Upgradation is a part of the ulama's duty, and here they have failed miserably. Ulama has, as a concept, deteriorated to the level that they are taken as hacks. So, they have not focused on the reform of the Muslims. They have not focused on playing a constructive role in bringing about peace and progress in society in line with teaching of the Quran and Islam. You know, we have seen last time what happened. In the final months of the insurgency, they carried out targets and attacks who betrayed their vision of Islamic rule. Nowhere in Islam it's mentioned that the women shall be killed if not wearing a parda. As a matter of fact, parda is recommended. Definitely it is recommended. But at the same time, the dignity of women is also recommended. And that's why I say the heaven is under the feet of the mother. And every woman is a mother at one time or the other. So the whole concept deteriorated it became die-hard, constricting, suffocating sort of a thing. And what happened, for example, dashing around the room, they'll grab a rope to cover the arms so that it could not be seen. Now, this was problem. Example, in 1996-2001, Taliban outlawed ordinary activities which were no common. For example, kite flying, fancy haircuts, even playing music. They were all banned. They forgot that the Muslim culture's music is a major, major part. You have gone to the Sufi enclave, the way, the state of halal is there, ecstasy. You mean to say the music isn't there? The qawwalis, the thumris, they are all Islamic in beginning. So the fact is that now ulmas have deteriorated, they are not respected anymore. And The respect that is given is primarily sentimental now because of the emotional attachment of the people have for their religion. We have seen that in all societies, without exception, until the last century, religion has legitimized power and wealth. And reason for this is that until the last century there was not much possibility of controlling the forces of popular will without resort to religion. So religion was a crutch used by the leaders. It was a handmaiden of politics. But in modern times, with very high socio-economic mobility, with extensive and intensive intrusion into the individual minds and the family homes of public media, the connection between everyday life and religion and the cultural background has been eroded. In most of cases, become almost non-existent. How many people in any religion adhere absolutely to the original norms? So the Muslims living in the modern urban setting only need the ulama. Their role now, instead of being interpreter and transmitters of knowledge, their job is to certify the birth, certify the marriage and death. So it's a minimal connection with Islam. So the minimal connection can vary from learning how to read Quran, do the prayers, have regular established practice for worship or the community assembly. From time to time, ulmas may be consulted by the individuals when they have a particular problem. You might have seen in the plays and the films when the husband divorces the wife, the family says, oh, this divorce should not have been there. You go to ulama and seek his advice. So they go and use them, but no obvious solution is possible without reference to religion. Typically, these particular problems arise in relation to marriage and divorce. So, ulmas are consulted by men and women unable to cope with the stress of the family life. They want divorce, but they don't agree on the division of property or the responsibility of the children. So, they go to the ulama for his advice. In effect, the reality, the role of the ulama in contemporary Muslim communities is reduced to pastoral care in local setting. Like pastors, that's in the local setting, providing mosque services, teaching of the young and leading daily prayers, and more rarely providing legitimacy to the government policy. But what is really missing is what Quran wanted them to do, the most important thing for Muslims. Whether you call them ulama or not, but their role is to prepare themselves for the examination hereafter, after death. And that needs serious self-examination for each individual. Ulama is a guided spiritual guide for self-awareness, for self-analysis. And conditions for such self-examination are quite different from the conditions and the qualifications required to be recognized publicly as alim. Alim is a singular. So those concepts are no longer valid. So are ulama required? Yes, if they adhere to that. But as they are, since these conditions are not there, what do? Get a job, support a family, keep peace in household. The wealthy, as a matter of fact, are patronizing these ulamas and use them to maintain the feudal hold on the poor. Ulama would say, well, what the landlord says, what the vadera says is the final word. Don't argue against that. Otherwise, your akhirat, the afterword, would be bad. Insofar as the professionalized manner, the qualification for the ulama can be very narrow. At one time it was, as I said, they were scholars of repute. For example, have you read Sheikh Sadi, the poems, his Gulistan and others? And I'm just going to write an article on that. But what Sadi has said, there's a classic word, the Gulistan. That is the real interpretation of Islam. So the expertise of the ulamas in the summary of standard text of one school of faith sometimes can be different. Tara, Salah, Sanyam, Nikah. These are the things which need to be modified in the modern context. And it's the job of the ulamas to do it, but they are not doing it. And that is because they lack experience in the ordinary life of the modern times. For example, they preach very strict hijab rules, but then themselves, what do? They are in the company of women who do not observe those rules. They preach the importance of distinction between halal and haram earning. But when the donation is made to them, they don't care from where the money is coming. They do not understand how to begin to mobilize their people for any collective cause rather than financing prayer services, funeral services. So all of this sounds depressing. Perhaps it is. But when the Muslims are not permitted to be Muslims, to be depressed or despairing, and the Muslims are required by Quran to gather resources and focus on the necessary routes as per the ulama's advice, which is not there. And to expand this, the hold of the ulama, they have got to get further acquainted with the modern thought and interpret Quran as per the thought of the modern times. You can never have the same thought. The thoughts would change. The basics would remain the same, but the interpretation, and that's why they were the interpreters and the transmitters. It's the highest importance that those teaching individuals, the ulamas, and the institutions are totally independent and are not bound by the sectarian ideology. You don't need colleges which teach just fighting and criticizing others, or encouraging disdain for who practice the devotional techniques, say, associated with Ahmadiyas and Sufism. In Islam, it's not there. In Quran, it's not there. They don't differentiate between Shia and Sunni, between Brahmanis and Ahmadiyas. So the institution and the individuals that you have must embody their independence. Ulamas are supposed to be extremely independent because the interpretation, like as judges, they have to be above approach. But are they? There has to be a way to create an intellectual space where knowledge can be extended, shared, and improved. And that is the role of ulama as per Quran. And if that role is played by ulama, you can be sure that all the negative thoughts about Islam would be a matter of the past. And the people would accept Islam as it should be, as one of the living, pulsating religions, minus the coercion, minus the wrong interpretation. And that's what ulamas are meant to do, meant to perform. Would they? Think about it. Thank you.